as we're doing this, I thought, of your background, which I could sort of detect through your YouTube,
Yes.
basically video. And was there sort of a before and an after in the way you practice law? Like, was there a point where you had an office that was like bigger and you were more corporate and you were doing things, and maybe now it's sort of the after where you're taking a different approach? I don't know. I sense like maybe there's been a transformation at some
Yes,
point.
there has been. Yes. So I'll give you a bit of the context. So when I became a lawyer, I had to do an internship for 10 months, and I interned with a lawyer that had a small practice.
Mhm.
She was the only lawyer. So she taught me everything she knows, and I was there for about a year and a half. And then the economic crisis happened in 2008, so I had to transition out, and I started working in a mid-size, very corporate immigration office in Toronto. And over there, I learned a lot, especially about economic immigration, but about the volume.
Mhm.
And also, the lawyer that I worked for was really good in marketing. So I learned a lot from him. Marketing, he was actually, I think, one of the first law firms that had like a website, like an immigration law firm that had a website. But then I quickly realized that I cannot be in this corporate immigration world where it was just very fast paced, and it was really about the bottom line and not so much about the clients that much
Mhm.
for me. Um, so then when that didn't work out, I right away opened my own office, and it was just me in my Toronto apartment in a one bedroom apartment with a laptop, a Blackberry, and a printer on my couch. And so I launched like a website. I launched another website with the same lawyer that where I had interned.
Right.
And I just started with I was like, okay, I need to have to cover all my expenses, I need to have one file. And so that lawyer gave me, would refer clients to me, and I was like, okay, I can pay my rent, I can pay my food, one file. And then it was like two files, and it was three files, and then fast forward thousands of files later. But yeah, and then from my apartment, I rented an office.
Mhm.
And then I started hiring law students to help me out.
Right.
And then from then I started hiring like assistants, receptionists, and then fast forward during the pandemic, the month that the pandemic started is actually when I had my biggest growth, is where I also rented like a big office. And we were almost like at 12 employees,
Mhm.
me being the only lawyer. And even though it was the pandemic, I think we did pretty well. But now everybody's working remote, things have changed a lot. So we're back down to me being at home
Right.
and having just a few assistants, but it's very different because yes, I still do some volume, but it's more about taking on very, very complex cases, spending the time on those, still able to maintain a volume without having, because I've perfected the systems a lot.
Mhm. Over time.
So yeah, there's been and as any entrepreneur knows, it goes up and down, right? So yeah.
Well, and it's good that you're able to adjust the size of your team through the volume that you're getting, because that's a big constraint. Sometimes you hire folks and all of a sudden you have those commitments, and we know how people can get when it touches their like lifestyle, and they rely on their job. So sometimes it's tricky to adjust the size of the team to the volume. But do you feel like how, how much is your time compressed these days? Like you have your clients, you're doing all these things. Do we catch you at the time where you're busier than you've been, or you're sort of you have the time to do your things, as you mentioned salsa before we
Yes.
started recording?
That's a good question, because a lot of people, anytime I tell anybody, "Oh, I do immigration," they always say, "Oh, it must be really busy these days," or "It must be really crazy," or "You must be really busy," or "Now you must not be busy anymore because Canada's cutting some of the programs." The thing is, I've always felt like my line of work, I'm always busy and there's always craziness happening. But at the same time, because for my mental health and my well being, I can only work a certain number of hours a day because it's so intense. The stories are so intense. The
Mm.
horrific consequences of family separation and things like that, or sometimes, even if it's not about that, something like so administrative where I have to dig in a million times and talk to colleagues, I get drained so much that within any given day, I will not spend more than a certain amount of hours per day because I just, my mind and my body can't. But in those hours that I work, it's always extremely intense. And it's always like just walking over here, answering questions on Google Chat to my with my coordinator. It's like
Right.
resolving the life problems of like four clients and their families just on the walk over. It's like, yes, do this, no, tell them that. Like one message, the last message I got was somebody just came at, they called us from the airport. They're telling him he has to go back to Romania or he has to get arrested. What do I tell him? Like this is the kind of stuff all the time.
Wow.
So it's always, that's why for me it's hard to answer the question, are you busy or are you not? It's just the answer is it's crazy, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah.
I hear what you're saying because it's always first the level of business can always depend on your level of effort in building the practice regardless of the market trend. And second of all, I mean, it's like an emergency room. Ask somebody that works 2 hours a day in an emergency room if they're busy when they work. They're like, yes, it's an emergency when I
Yes.
do work. It's crazy.
Yes. But you get used to it, right? So like sometimes I tell people the stories and they're like, I don't know how you do that. And I'm like, well, I mean, it's been like 16, 17 years now. So it's like this is all I do day in and day out. For me, it's normal. What's intense is when I have a client that I really care about where we did, I mean, I care about all of them, but some of them like I get really attached to.
Right.
And then if me and my team build such a perfect file and then the client's getting deported. When someone gets deported, it's like a 2, 3 week window where it's really, I'm working day and night, not necessarily sitting and typing, but thinking about the arguments, how I'm gonna talk to the clients, kind of become a therapist, you know, how I'm gonna talk to the judge, how I'm gonna prepare a strategy for them. That's when it's like it's really bad. Like the level of stress, like I'll often dream about what I'm gonna tell the judge, and I'll wake up, I'll be like, okay, this argument, that argument. That's when it's like really, really bad. But the rest of the time it's like the normal crazy, you know?
So you're doing immigration also. Basically, you help people get into Canada or stay into Canada if like.
So people who want to immigrate here, so it could be someone that's coming, well, this is not immigration, but like visitor visa. Let's say as tour for tourists, so I do visitor visas. I do a lot of family sponsorship. So people sponsoring their husband, wife, their parents or their children. So these are people coming into Canada. And then I do a lot of people that are already here without any papers. So they've been here 3 years, 4 years, 10 years, 15 years. They have no status. Trying to get paperwork for them either through they want to make a refugee claim or they want to make humanitarian application. And then I also specialize if those applications are refused to go to litigation and fight the
Right.
cases. So I don't do any economic immigration, which is work permit, study permit, express entry, travailleur qualifié, all that
Right.
stuff. Like after I
Investors.
left the mid-sized law firm, I was like, I'm not interested in working with companies or just professionals that are, for me, it was, I'm a big empath, so for me was I want to know the stories of the people that are vulnerable and have difficulties. Like it just works for me to help them.
Makes sense. Wow. So we open on sort of what's your practice and the like your time like doing this in terms of how you manage, but when it gets to what you actually do, you do help. Like you've been helping for what, 17 years?
16, 17
16,
years.
17 years. Folks actually almost have the right of land in a place where we have a good, I mean, Canada is a good place. I went through those processes, but my initial country was not a place where, you know, it was too tough being in. I was in France until I moved, but we did this application where I got sponsored by my wife and so on. So I'm sort of a little bit familiar with the process. But I mean, you've basically, if we look at your track record, you've probably helped hundreds of folks actually, you know, make sure they can stay here pretty much.
Yes, I mean, when I talk to my immigration lawyer friends, and sometimes we get really down because we're like, this is really hard. Like, why do I continue to? Sometimes it gets really hard, like when the government changes the rules, or sometimes clients get upset. You know, we do everything we can, but then it's, you know, something happens and it's, you know, we can't make it faster, so they blame us. But then we always remind ourselves, no, but we are changing lives. We are helping people. Like, you know, yes, there's forces that could make us feel like we're not helping, but I look back at all the clients that I've helped, that have landed, that have thanked me, and I remember that. And sometimes I help a client who will get approved, and then I'll have these amazing moments where they will tell me like, oh, like one client recently told me, I don't know how you do your job. It must be so difficult. And it's rare to come across a client like that who cares about
your
me.
side, yeah.
And then it's like, okay, like it's important what I'm doing, and I want to continue what I'm doing.
What makes that makes a lot of sense. And like I think we stumbled into each other the other day, and you mentioned that you got into law because it was some expectation placed upon you
Yes.
by family members initially, but still you had the same specialty for
Long time.
a long
Yes.
time. So how do you feel about like how you got into the like this line of work versus why you're still here today? What has happened in the meantime that keeps you here by choice, I guess, today?
That's a good question. I was actually chatting with a friend of mine this morning, an immigration lawyer, because just last week we got news that I do a lot of humanitarian and compassionate application, which is applications where people have no status here. They or may not have children, they have difficulties, they might be sick, and they don't they don't have access to any pathway, but they have access to that pathway. I do a lot of that. And
Right.
last week immigration announced that they announced that the processing time will now be over 10 years. And in some cases, it's going to be 500 months, which is about 41 to 50 years.
Which is like forever, basically.
Which is basically saying they don't want this category to exist. They don't want people to apply, and they're trying to get rid of the backlog. So I was messaging my colleague, and I was like, are we still going to be able to be immigration lawyers? Like, should we do another area of law? And I find myself every few years now, or sometimes a few times a year, being like, maybe I should apply for maybe I should get a job. Like, maybe, because where is this going? So, but then time passes and I just keep doing what I'm doing. I mean, it's a bit scary, but I'm very, very, very specialized, right? This is the only thing that I know how to do. And because of that, I know that I'm very, very good at it. But I often think like, sometimes I just want to open a dance school.
Right.
Like, one of my dreams is to have a dance studio where people can dance salsa and tango during the day, during the week, not on the weekends and not at night, because I'm a mom and I'm very tired. It's been, my daughter's 5. Every week, every night at 6 o'clock, I'm like, I'm gonna go dancing, and then I don't go dancing because I'm exhausted.
Right.
Sometimes like I should do that, but then you think about the financial situation. But then the thing is, when I go on vacation, I mean, I never really have vacation because I always have to check my phone. The thing is, if I don't work for a few hours or even a day, I don't like it because I love going into my email and fixing the problems. Like every day every minute of my work is fixing massive problems. And I think there's a big satisfaction to that. So I think the fact that I've stayed so long, it just shows that I'm good at it. I like it. And the reality is that I'm probably going to stay in it, but I mean, you never know, right? So
It's interesting. It reminds me of a conversation I was having with Cassandra, which you may have run into also here where the podcast is recorded, which is the Vina, this co-working place in Montreal. And she used to be a pro hockey player. She used to play with the Canadiens Montréal, and then also she won the World Cup in 2015 with the national team. So after all that, she sort of hit a point where she got hit by a stick during a game, and like it was the excuse she needed to get out of this scheme of performance she felt trapped within.
yes.
And now she helps folks sort of transition from like she employed the term power leaks the other day, which is sort of like when we give away power to something in a pressure context. Like for example, I've been a financial advisor doing a performance environment, something less critical than you, but somewhat critical as well, some degree. And sometimes I was so attached to my performance that I was giving the power away to recognition or even a need to shine in some ways. And so I'm curious how you address that in your practice, knowing that you're doing something that's rewarding because you're performing, but at the same time you're that person that delivers every time, and you're how do you deal with not giving away too much power to that side of it, and preserving your initial intent, something that's healthy for you.
Like you mean how do I make sure I don't give everything of myself?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
That you're doing it by choice, and that you know when you get into this context that you're in that context, and you can step out and step back.
That's an interesting question because I had told you before that I had a podcast as well, and there was one show that I did. I just only did a few shows, and the last show that I did was with the client that was getting deported.
Yes,
And I decided to do the podcast because I was like, maybe if the news outlets pick this up, maybe something's gonna happen, you know. And I was so consumed. It was the deportation case. It was the story is basically. I mean, I can mention it because it's public. His name is Curtis, and he had been in Canada for 50 years, and he came when he was like 6 months or 8 months from the US.
Okay.
And he was a permanent resident, but his parents never helped him or advised him to apply for citizenship. When he was in his 20s, he got into some drug offenses, so he lost his PR status in his early 20s. He went to jail, he came out, he was a complete changed man. He ended up marrying a Canadian citizen, he ended up having 4 kids, and his father's here, his mother's here, all of his siblings are here. He showed me pictures of when he was a baby in Canada, like going to kindergarten, maternelle, and then première année, like first grade, second grade.
Like his
his whole life is here. Like 6 months or 9 months he was,
Yeah.
And because he was never a citizen, he was basically in this limbo stage where Canada Border Services Agency wanted to remove him, but they couldn't get an American passport for him because he hadn't lived there in so long. And finally they got the passport, and that's around the time that I met him. But because you had criminality,
Yeah.
unfortunately in immigration, it's a big no-no. Like they really kind of punish you for that, even if you're completely changed. And he was one of the nicest men I've ever met. He's still my client. I mean, we're working really hard now to bring him back.
Right.
During the pandemic, he worked in like a residence for how do you call it? Like a
Elderly people.
elderly people, exactly. And because family members couldn't visit, he would be there holding their hands, talking to them where nobody could visit them. And he went to the funerals of a lot of these people. Like a lot of families told him, you were there when my grandfather or father or mother was dying, where nobody else was there. Like he was a guardian angel. During the pandemic, they created a special program to help those people get PR. But we did everything, and he ended up getting deported. I drove him to and I never do this, but I went personally. I drove him to the airport, and I was like, we'll do everything to bring you back. When I had this case, I was so consumed, so stressed every day, couldn't sleep every day. And I remember my therapist telling me, you cannot get so involved. You have to put a separation. And I remember being so angry in that moment. And I don't know if I told her, but I thought to myself after, if I don't get angry, I cannot help my clients. Like, yes, in this case we lost, but I have so many other cases like this where I've won. And I've only won because I put my heart and sweat and blood, like I put myself in the shoes of these clients. If I
Right.
don't, that's why it's very hard sometimes to talk about my job, because I feel people don't understand, and I don't blame them for it, but how can they understand, like when you have someone's life in your hands, like if I only had said this argument or that argument, get this paper, get that evidence. And so many times we do that and we get the person to stay, and like he left, like his kids are still here, his wife is here, it's horrific, he's going to a country that he's never been to.
Yeah.
So it's I know it's not good for my health to do it, but I don't know any other way, because I feel if I don't put everything, then I'm not being a good lawyer, and I'm not being myself.
Interesting. It's interesting in life how common sense sometimes is not necessarily the way to go. Everybody would tell you to dissociate, but at the same time, you have those people you're helping that you can only help if you give some of yourself.
Yes.
And that's what you see, like what you're clearly doing in this case with your clients. That's interesting. I find myself also sometimes, like even in entrepreneurship, for example, everybody tells you scale, don't exchange your time for money, find a system that's replicable, that's profitable, that you cannot be the person that's going to execute, but you're the person that designs.
Yes.
Perfect. But how do you scale good legal advice?
Yes.
I have a friend. He has a magnificent way of helping clients with communication. Is somebody's like really good friend. He's helping us, and I mean, if he scaled his agency, how would he be helping people?
Mhm.
Like, would it be as good? So, yeah, interesting how it sounds sometimes like a good advice, but how can you really be a good doctor if you, or, those folks in shelters? I've seen this movie, they basically take care of young children that have difficulties with sort of uh, like criminality or all those things, and the educators get really invested.
Mhm.
And sometimes they're like, I quit my job if you drop like that kid from our institution, because every
Mhm.
but how if somebody doesn't really defend and stand for those folks, who will? So
Exactly.
it's interesting.
Recently in my office, I've been revamping all the accounting systems, and it's a nightmare. Like, it's, as you may know, like accounting, especially for legal bookkeeping stuff, it's extremely complicated because you have to meet the requirements of the different associations. And my husband once said, "Can't you just ask AI to help you with this? Can't you just ask AI to train you on that?" And I love him to death, but in my head I was like, "Oh my God, no. Like, AI cannot fix this, Like, there's so many little things just in the legal bookkeeping matters and the different applications and the different clients are in Canada, outside Canada, taxes, no taxes. Like, it's so unique that if I use AI, it's gonna destroy it just doesn't work. So yeah.
And then what's interesting is that in the mind of somebody else that thinks technically, it's probably a problem that has a start and a finish line, and that they can put into a box and solve. But I hear what you're saying. It's like, yeah, it's not that easy sometimes to solve human or technical problems. Um, but I guess, did it fluctuate through time, your experience, in how happy you managed to be despite that burden? I mean, you decided to do what you're doing, so you must probably enjoy some aspects while some.
Yes, I think what helps me is having a really good team. Like, I've been really lucky to have a very good team at the office. Obviously, like, there's also been like ups and downs, but right now I have one coordinator that she's really, really, really good. And I find the more I practice, the more I'm able to like really choose well the people that I'm gonna work with. And when my when the coordinator is on the front line, it makes my job much easier because they're getting all the phone calls, they're getting all the emails, and it only filters to me when it's necessary, but at the same time, I'm the one giving all the answers and the strategy. So that flow, it's like a surgeon with their nurse technicians, like it's like a dance that has to go really well. And I feel right now like I'm quite lucky with the team.
Right.
And I think and it took me a long time to learn a lot of things because I'm a bit of a perfectionist and a micromanager, so it's very easy for me to be like, no, let's do it like this, or I'll go in. Like, but if you have someone that's good, they'll do it their own way, but it works with me, and then I don't need to interfere. Like, when there's trust, like I trust that she's gonna return every single email. I trust that she's gonna return every single phone call. It's like in immigration, you cannot miss one phone call, you cannot miss one email because somebody can message you, be like, I got arrested, or um oh, I didn't know, like, I hired you for this, but I just realized my work permit expires in 2 weeks. Like, you cannot be like, I'm going to answer that in, like, it has to be in real time. So when I have somebody that really meshes with me, then I think it makes my job bearable, but also in most of the time, like, very enjoyable because I feel I'm supported. So
Yeah, I can relate to that in my own ways. Through a financial advisor practice, you do have that sense of, well, it's not somebody's life, but it's somebody's funds being transferred from a place to another, or something need to happen. And if you have a relatively significant volume, and folks helping you, you do have to rely on them not to drive yourself crazy. So you want to make sure that the commitments are delivered, and if they are accountable, for their own things, that really really helps your
yes.
lifestyle, and being basically having a verbal workload.
Yes. And I think the other thing that what I enjoy a lot is that I'm my own boss, obviously. Like, I think I work when I want, I don't work when I don't want. Sometimes I wake up in the morning and that first hour I'm extremely efficient. and then I need like a couple of hours to like do my mental health well-being thing so that I can come back and do it. Sometimes I need to just be off for a little bit, but I'm always on call. But I think in order to do this job, the type of work that I do, and with my personality, I need to be in charge of the decision making processes. And I think that's a big factor in why I think I've stayed in this.
Makes sense. Wow, that's quite something. I do realize that your work is critical. I mean, it is. So you seem to have learned to live with it. And um, do we feel a sense of gratefulness? I mean, when I think of the notion that some folks have to fight for their right to be here, or just file very serious application to make sure they can stay here in a place where we have a democracy. It's relatively safe to live in Canada. It's probably one of the safest places. Um, does it give like there's a sense of humility that comes from that? I mean, realizing that what we have here is not necessarily granted. Do you must realize that much more than others, being so much like in contact with that. How that does it help, or is it a force that helps you feel maybe grateful or just realize something in your life?
I think without directly realizing, like on a regular basis, for sure, unconsciously and indirectly throughout the years, I know how lucky I am to be a Canadian citizen, to have been born here, and for example, for my daughter to be born here and be a Canadian citizen, or my husband, he's born in Cuba, he immigrated to the States, he became an American citizen, and then I sponsored him and he became a Canadian citizen. Like, the stories that I've seen from my clients really, you know, it is such a privilege to be in this country. And I know that there's a lot of people misusing the system and also lying to get here. But, because of my work, I have like this deep, direct knowledge of so many adverse conditions in the world. Like, I'll give you one example. Like, I have one client who came here from Afghanistan. He was sponsored by his father, but his father, and he was really young at the time, and his father didn't indicate in the paperwork that he was married with children. So he's excluded from bringing his wife and five kids to Canada. So now his wife and five kids, who are all girls, are in Afghanistan hiding from the Taliban. And we're trying to make this application to get his family here. And it's been
Right.
years and it's very complicated. And, getting the emails every day, my daughters cannot go to school. Like my daughter goes to school, his daughters cannot go to school. My wife can no longer get out of the house. It's too dangerous. There's no access to food. They have to keep, I can't, these are the things that I can't comprehend because it's so unimaginable. So, and this is just one story amongst so many others, right? Um, so when I'm faced with these stories on a regular basis, I think it has really allowed me to feel a sense of purpose in my life. And also, even though I mean we're all the same, like we think we have problems, like, oh, this hurts, or I'm not making enough money, or I just wish I could do this thing to extension to my house or whatever. Like we all stress about these things. But then I feel being faced with these situations, like one phone call with one client, like I'm just pulled back into like, no, like you're really lucky to be alive. You're really lucky to be here. So I think this has had a very big fundamental impact on my life.
It's interesting how it touches on awareness, which is often something that, sometimes you just put a light in a place and you're like, oh, this is the room around me. And
Yeah.
it's usually helpful to be aware
Yes.
of what's happening. Somewhat, there's something about you of a fighter, like your profession, the way you carry yourself. Did you have to, was there some personal fights that you had to fight that made you want to fight for others? Like
Yes.
we have that had ours.
Yes, big time. Well, I was raised by a very abusive father. So he was beating me, my mother, and my brother on a regular basis. He was emotionally abusive, physically abusive. And I'm Armenian, so we come I'm Armenian. My mother's from Armenia, immigrated here from Armenia. My father immigrated here from Syria. He was Armenian as well. My mother grew up in a very strict Armenian family, and my father grew up in a very strict Armenian family in Syria. My father was in the Syrian army, and he lived through a lot of horrific traumas himself. And so when he became a dad, he didn't know how to be at the time, not just at the time, but just himself with all of his traumas. He didn't know how to deal, and he had a lot of undiagnosed mental health issues, and he was a monster. And police was over multiple times. Physical abuse was really, really hard. And he left when I was 14, and I didn't see him for 5 years. He actually moved down the street from our home.
Okay.
And I didn't see him for 5 years. It's really unbelievable. Until I was biking one day and I saw him on the balcony, and I went to talk to him. And he was older, he had developed Parkinson, and he cried, and I felt bad. So my family kind of got back together, but a narcissist never changes. So he was no longer physically abusive, but he continued to be extremely emotionally abusive. And a few years later, I moved to Toronto to do my stage over there, my articles, to be a lawyer. And I just realized later on that I actually moved away from Montreal to get away from him. And I also traveled a lot before that. And I think it's because I wanted to be away from the home.
Yeah.
And when I was in Toronto, I became a lawyer, and I was a young lawyer. I had just become a lawyer, and I went to a federal court case to argue a case. And then when I came back and I was taking off my gown, and I got a message from my mom and my brother saying, "Oh, we're here in Toronto. We came to get you. Just come home." And I knew right away that he was dead. Like, I knew he was dead. And I started crying, not so much because I felt bad because a human had died, but there was a lot of relief because it's like the abuser had died. And it was a very horrific time. Like, when I went to the apartment, my brother and my mom had driven from Montreal, and my dad had committed suicide, and he hung himself. And I remember that maybe if my memory is a little bit bad when it comes to this stuff because of the trauma, but
Of course.
a few months before that, he would always call me, and he would bother me. Basically, he would just talk bad about my mom because my mom had left him, and it was all this thing that narcissists do to kind of pull you back in. And I remember one day I told him on the phone, "You are making me anxious. I cannot talk to you anymore." And he just lost it because I had never really stood up to him. And there was one day where he called, and for the first time I didn't answer. And I know that he committed suicide like a few minutes after that. So there was everything was kind of set up for us to feel guilty. And so this is kind of the background of my life. And I think because I lived through adversity, because I myself was beaten and not allowed to feel what I feel, but because I had a mother that she was still very loving, and she tried her best to protect us, even though a lot of times she couldn't. But because there was, my grandparents were very loving, especially my grandmother, and also my friends. Like, I went to private school. My parents put me to Armenian school, which was horrific. But then I went to a all-girl private school, which was, for me, it was also horrific. But the group of friends that I made there was so good. So, with the family and friends, I just became this person that just very compassionate and empathetic for other people's problems. And I know I'm currently doing a training about trauma by Gabor Mate, and he was saying that look at the profession that you're in. There's a reason why you're doing what you're doing. There's a reason why I'm in a profession that's constantly helping people in very vulnerable situations. It's because in a way I'm trying to help myself.
And probably you also grew the kind of strength from adversity that allows you now to stand up for others. Interesting how you went from first of all, thanks for sharing this.
Of course.
But how you came from a place where you were left into a place of injustice to be like a lawyer and basically being close to the system that's supposed to provide justice for others. a quote came through my mind as you were sharing, your story about how you said that your father, at the same time, you're describing him as a narcissistic person that he was, and but at the same time, you're saying that you seem to have some distance and evaluate his situation. They say that with fathers, we go from like first we idolize,
Yeah.
then we demonize, and then last we humanize. And I felt like I went through some things myself, with my father, and different kind of abuse from adults, like when it comes to the old way of disciplining, child, and it leaves scars through life. But I felt like, do you feel like you've managed to humanize or to actually see your father for
That's a
what?
good question. I mean, the thing with my father was that I did idolize him. As a child, I remember being his favorite, but also he was so loving and so caring and so fun. And he was always so extraordinary in so many ways, but at the same time, he was a monster. And in the world of trauma, this is the worst kind of trauma because it's the hot and the cold. It's really, really bad. And the thing is, it's a difficult question because there's a lot of who I am is because of him, because he was a mechanic and he was a handy person. Like he was constantly always fixing things around the house, always fixing the car, always doing stuff. And I learned a lot just from seeing him do those things. I think it made me, because I'm a person that solves problems and I'm very resourceful, I think that comes from him directly. But there's so many things that I have. Like, for example, to this day, if I wake up in the middle of the night and I have to go to the bathroom, I go on my tippy toes because I'm afraid to make noise because I don't want to wake up my husband. Because my dad would go crazy if we woke him up. He would beat us. My husband's not going to beat me. He doesn't care. But this is so ingrained in me. Like if I heard a loud noise now, I would feel the adrenaline and the cortisol in my body would be so high that I would be exhausted for a few days. And so it's, to be honest, yes, I have moments where I'm like, he just did the best he could. He had unresolved things. But because I became a mother, I can't even imagine a world where I would hurt my daughter. And remembering that he used to slap me so hard and he used to hit us with a belt and bang my head against the wall because I forgot my keys. It's hard to humanize, to be honest. So I think becoming a mother has really affected the way I see all this, and I think there's still a lot of processing that needs to be done about all that.
Yeah, I think in a case like this, probably less about humanizing than just seeing things for what they are, distanced from our own perception of it. Like, for me, going through some of my own stuff when I was small, like, I got to a point where I felt like, say, in the case of my father, I used to say to my mom or to folks around me, you cannot blame a rock for being a rock. And it was my way of saying that the attribute of a person that's not me says more about that person than about me. So I guess the most you can do about humanizing or getting to that second phase of perception of your father in this case, or for people listening, if they have people like that, they can think of, is just distancing ourselves maybe from the whole thing, like just seeing it from above and knowing it doesn't have anything to do with us, but more about like the person doing the harm.
Exactly. And also trying to, in my everyday life now, not get into friendships or working relationships or situations where I would kind of be not in the same intensity, but kind of be in that same, someone's hot, someone's cold, someone's good, someone's bad. Like that for me, it's like, oh, that's like a good thing. So it still affects me until now. And I have to kind of catch myself in these situations. So
It's interesting, yeah, how sometimes, like, especially with parents when they've been authority figures to us, like with anybody, you've built a skill set that you can take anything coming at you business wise, like somebody's challenging you, you're gonna challenge back, but sometimes somehow you've been like, there's something way more scary in confronting the adult that was once your like sort of your person in a position of authority, yeah, it's I can relate to that.
And I think what I what's positive about it is that when I talk to some clients, women clients who call me and they're like, this is happening, I don't have my papers, but I'm in this relationship and he's hitting me, I am so cutthroat. You leave now, I'm going to send you the information of a shelter, you're calling the police, I'm calling the police. Like, I know exactly what to say, and I tell them I've been in this situation, my mother's been in this situation, and I've helped a lot of clients with things like that. And I tell myself, there's a reason why things happen to me, and maybe if I can help one other person, one other child, then this is the positive thing that's going to come out of it.
It hit me recently. I was reading a book and it described sort of what you're saying here about ambiguous relationships. So the book is called, actually it's in my desk over there, it's called The Five Types of Wealth. It talks about how time and freedom is as much of a wealth as money, if not more. And it says take your relationship and sort of see, is it positive, is it negative, or is it ambiguous? Because the ambiguous are the worst.
Yes.
You get hot and cold.
Yes.
And like a bad relationship is you go because it's bad,
Yeah.
so you just go. Something that's hot and cold, it's
Yes.
tricky. It pulls you, but it hurts you.
Yes.
It's a tough
Yes.
pattern to navigate.
And I had that with clients too. It doesn't happen a lot, but sometimes, a client is so nice to us, and then as soon as something is not clear or we couldn't do something that they want the impossible, they turn on us. And only in the last few years, I've been able to fire clients. I'm like, you know what? There's no trust here. You're not trusting me. I used to stay and keep them on, and I realize those relationships are so hard for me. Like a client on the phone yelling at me, it's like my dad is yelling at me, and I'd be like, I am not. This has to be a respectful relationship, and I tell them, look, I'm gonna refer you to another lawyer because this is not gonna work. So
I can relate to that as well. I had a process in my practice that I'm exiting from now, but that was when a client basically is disrespecting the profession, had a negative perception of somebody that's in a position of having to sell a service, or not respectful of how you're gonna service them respectfully and non-emotionally. I'm gonna offer the option to exit, and sometimes it creates this small sort of authority that they will respect the next time. Sometimes they're just a better fit somewhere else, because it's like this 80-20, where 3% of clients can take 99% of your soul. And then
That's
you're
right.
drained.
That's right. Yes.
So those are like professionally tough as well to handle.
Yes.
Okay, but you came a long way. It's interesting how also you seem to be how to say, comfortable in your own shoes as well. Is that true? Like, do you maybe because you know yourself more than
Yes.
some folks that didn't have to go through the struggle, you seem like you don't have too much to prove. I mean, yes, you're a lawyer, you
Yes,
know all
yes,
those
yes.
things that provide status, but you also seem like somebody that just has a genuine smile and is gonna say, hey, let's talk,
I'm super
you're curious.
yes, I'm super curious. I'm super sociable. Like, I think as much as I get drained by a lot of things, if I don't have, I had a therapist once tell me every day you have to try to do the acronym SAFE. S for social, A for activity, F for fun, and E for exercise. And it's so true. Like, if there's a day that passes that I'm not social, then I feel I'm not happy. So as much as, yes, I think I'm a very confident person, I know who I am, but I crave a lot being with other people, especially meeting new people. That's why when I went to the dance world, I met so many people. Working here at VinHub, like just meeting, coming here and meeting new people, like I feel I can talk to anybody about anything. So yeah.
Well, it came true when I first met you at this event here, and you were like asking questions. A lot of time we are in representation, and so we try to sell what we do, like explain, hey, I'm this, see me, I'm
Yes.
like, and with you it was the opposite. You were like, what are you doing? Oh wow, this is interesting. Like, no ego kind of thing. Like, very interesting. Few people put themselves in a position of learners, like this but that's also maybe the most beneficial place to be, because if you learn something, you can actually action. So this was inspiring from my first contact with you. That's why I remembered like a few weeks after when we bumped into each other, like this is what you said exactly, because you start paying more attention to people that pay attention to you.
Yes.
But what would you say, to somebody that's younger, that's in the phase where they're actually going through the struggles, whether it's something like the type of abuse you described, or and went through, or just trying to find themselves there in this stage of crisis. If you were next to a person when that person is having their thoughts at a vulnerable time, what would be the toolkit, or what would be the few words you would exchange?
That's a
with
good
them?
question. I think if you asked me that like maybe 10 years ago, I would tell you that I would tell the go do this, go do that, join this group, join that group, go find activity, go travel by yourself.
Solution.
Yes, but now I realize that people really have to do things on their own when they realize that it's time. And I would just listen. Like if somebody was, I have some younger immigration lawyers that call me and they're like, "Oh, how did you start your business? What can you tell me?" and all that. And I used to be very like I'm like, "Okay, give me your email. I'm gonna send you like the 10 things you need to do." Like at the time when I started, it was like ads on Craigslist and Kijiji. Like I remember having an ad on Craigslist.
Right.
I would tell people like, "Okay, start a web, do a website, go to a coffee shop and put on the board that you're an immigration lawyer." But now I just kind of ask them like, what is it that you want to do? What do you want? And I just listen to them, maybe answer a few questions, but I don't. You cannot walk the path of somebody. Like a lot of people call me friends, family with like problems, and I don't jump in anymore with all the solutions because most of the time they're not going to do what you're telling them to do. They they really have to go through their own process of realizing and going through the difficulty and see if they really want to break the pattern and come out of it.
So
Yeah,
instead of using the force of your arguments, you're using your influence to let them like come up with their own answers.
definitely.
Interesting. And so that's you today. And before, you would have taken a different approach. What what can you wish for yourself, like the next level of growth, like you in 15 years, and the maturity that you will acquire with the next, I don't know, 2 decades? Where do you hope to be uh, in terms of state of mind and approach to life? And
It's also a good question. That's something that I actually lack, is having like, I always think in the moment, in the day. Like this morning I did a YouTube video, then I set up like some new policies with my office. I send a few, like I'm looking for a new company to help me with this part of the marketing. I realize sometimes that I don't have a perspective of the 5 year, 10 year, 15 year. It's more like today, with everything, the energy that I have in those few hours I'm working, like what's the maximum that I can do. um but I need to have a better vision of where I want to go. I thought back when I expanded my office that the goal, and I used to say that to my employees, I want to have a really big office. And I used to have only women working for me, and I was really proud of that. And I was like, I want to have like a law firm that's like mostly women and just help as many people as possible. Now that vision has changed a lot because the limiting factor is me, because there's so much that I can do. I think in the future, I would like to train somebody. Like I have a lot of knowledge, I have a lot of wisdom about immigration, and I have a lot of tools. I would like to be able to give that knowledge to somebody and maybe work with somebody that can take things to the next level, to maybe go to that vision that I have. But at the same time, I'm not sure, because I don't know if an immigration law firm that doesn't do any economic immigration is a type of business that can scale. How can you scale on human misery and vulnerability, right? Like it's not like I'm doing one. I have one company and I have to prepare 100 work permits, which is like a cookie cutter thing. Like every single case is different. Like sometimes I'll spend 5 hours with my team to decide, okay, this client from the Philippines, that she cannot divorce because in the Philippines divorce doesn't exist. What arguments are we going to put to explain this, and this? And we'll spend 5 hours on this argument alone and this fact scenario alone. So, I said earlier that I'm a dancer. Like I like to dance tango, I like to dance salsa. I would definitely like to see that in my future. I like to meet new people all the time. My daughter, I think part of it is too, like my daughter is young, she's 5, and it's like my life has, I don't like to say that it's been on pause, but it's just starting to kind of being able to have that time to think about what I want to do. So maybe if in a few years we do another podcast, I can have a better idea of where it's going. Yeah.
Wow. It's such an interesting question to begin with, just to well, to yeah, to know different people work differently. I mean, my wife, for example, always was more into the day to day, and she's slowly starting to sort of get into entrepreneurship and see a vision. But every time we talk 5 years, she's ready to talk about it more than she used to. But at the same time, she's more into the now, and it's been a huge quality that has balanced my life, I guess, in ways. Um, so interesting. That's definitely. No, I feel like to franchise something like a legal office, it's probably going to be as much as what's the deal for the clients as well as what's the deal for the lawyers, that like what's the benefit for me, an immigration lawyer, to work under your umbrella rather than myself, because there's plenty of people practicing this profession, I'm assuming, but I don't know. Maybe the path to an answer on how to have those folks around is to create a wonderful deal for the practitioners. But that's your space, so I'm just
I mean, the other thing is the profession is changing a lot too, because immigration, Canada is really stopping a lot of different programs. A lot of immigration practitioners are worried, like, are we going to be relevant? What's going to happen with AI? Like as I was saying earlier, like last week, the processing times of one of the applications I do the most is now over 10 years. I think as we're talking, I'm realizing what I would really want to do is, I don't know if I'll go back to doing a podcast because the technical part of it like destroyed me, but the idea was to talk to people, because everybody has that immigrant friend that they love, but then overall they want Canada to not be so welcoming to immigration, right? Like this is kind of like the language that's going around, right? Like a lot of people that are very liberal are becoming quite conservative when it comes to immigration, including myself for certain situations. When I see someone come to Canada and say, "Oh, I'm from India, I want to make a refugee claim," I'll be like, "Okay, why?" "Well, I have 2 kids here and I'm working." "Okay, but do you have a risk to your life? Because you have to meet the definition." "No, it's just because politically, economically over there, it's not good." I'm like, "Well, no, you can't make a refugee claim. I don't recommend that." Then they make a refugee claim. It takes like 3, 4 years. They're in the system. It costs the government thousands of dollars, and they take the spot of somebody that actually deserves. So when I've seen that happen a lot, it kind of it becomes very demoralizing, right? But just because that person exists doesn't mean that there are so many good people coming to this country. Doesn't mean that there are, the racism in the world, the intolerance to other people and other cultures, especially in Canada, especially in Quebec, I find is becoming so bad that that's something that I could see myself being involved in. Like, if something is not happening to you, you you can't really have an opinion, but I think that's what's happening in Canada. Like everybody has an opinion about immigration. But if it was you and your children, what would you do, right? Like if somebody comes here from Gaza, right? They come here and they want to make a refugee claim because of everything that's happening. And then someone might say, well, no, we don't have the resources. We don't have housing. We don't have that. But it's like, okay, but if it was you and you had kids, wouldn't you do, put aside the policy or an argument around it. Like, wouldn't you do if you had an opportunity to leave, wouldn't you do exactly the same thing? If the international law says that if you enter a country, you're allowed to make that claim, then that's an international rule. But because it's not happening to you, you can't, it's all these people behind their computers having these opinions, so if there's somewhere that I see myself going, is try to open people's minds around being more tolerant towards our fellow human beings.
Wow, that's yeah, that's powerful, and I think that often when we paralyze, like when that's sort of what we see happening in the U.S. I guess without going too political,
Yeah.
how can you not go political when you have folks that govern that are also openly you know doing misconduct, like the ones we see with Trump in the U.S. Um, More than ever, I think it takes people like you to sort of be there to defend to defend folks. Um, Also, when it comes to you being a professional figure and you're defending your clients, you're leading your staff to help them be successful. As a woman, you mentioned before that it's important to you to have sort of facilitate the success of other women. Maybe that's what you like, sort of the goal in having a cabinet that's driven by women. How do you feel about this the place of women in society today? Because it's something that I feel. I mean, first of all, I feel like it's a man's problem as much as it's a woman's problem, and there's so much to be said and done that I'm just curious how you
Yes.
believe that being a leadership figure and also a woman. How do you feel about that?
Well, at some point in the span of 5 years at my firm, we were four women that had babies, including myself. And so I saw firsthand what happens when women have a child and then come back and they're completely divided between home and work, even if they had a supportive partner at home. It's just because the role of a mom, the instinct of a mother, is just it's the burden is so much. And I mean, there's so much I can say about this, but it's just we're supposed to be carrying everything on our backs and then supposed to be have not our career be affected. I mean, I think me having a child affected my career because I just don't have the same energy level. I can't deal with certain complex cases because it's just too much, um so that's why I wanted to have an environment where I understood and I gave flexibility, and I think it worked for a long time, but in order to scale, I think it's very difficult.
And there's this great book that is called Scaling Up, and it's very, I mean, after what you're saying about how it's tough, the pressure on your time versus how to scale, it offered me a different perspective on what scaling is like, what type of system it's built on, and it gave me a relief also. Like, I didn't feel as much as if it was gonna depend so much on my effort. Like, if effort was the key thing, it seems to be also like systems are a big part of the answer. Anyway, it was embarrassing to me because I mean, I'm not a woman, but I want to be involved with my family very much. And the year that my daughter was born, I started talking to somebody to try to change my beliefs around how I was going to have to trade family time for business time. Is there a way that I can make the two reinforce each other? And at the time, I found an answer that worked for me and that helped me sort of do things that would take me a lot longer to do with less time. And it sort of struck a chord, like a belief was really shaken that I was cutting 1/3 of my time working, but sort of doubling the result that year. And anyway, so it's just a glimpse of hope. I don't have the answers.
Yes.
Of course, like you see me, I'm not Warren Buffett here, but but I think there's some interesting answers there in terms of
Well, I mean, I always say the story because it's like it's almost comical, but it's not really. When I had my daughter, she I was 37 weeks and I thought I had another week. But when it happened, obviously, go to the hospital. And I had one application I had to file. I had a deadline, but I thought I had a few days. And it's only me that could have written, in immigration, we call it a submission letter, like it's the letter.
Yeah.
And I'm in the triage in the hospital. It's pandemic, so I have a mask on, and my water broke, and I had to wait there an hour or two. And I have a picture of me with my laptop writing the letter. And there's nobody that could help me. Not my team, not another colleague. Like it was like, 3 o'clock in the morning. I knew that for the next 2 days I wouldn't be available. And looking back, I'm like, wow, like that's crazy. And I remember 2 days after, I was answering some emails. I never took mat leave. Was doing team meetings while breastfeeding. And, I do a little bit regret not being able to spend more time. I mean, I was still with my daughter all the time, but my focus wasn't always. I thank God for my husband who was really, really hands on. But, before my daughter, I always used to say I have my day shift and my night shift. For 15 years, I would come home or 13 years, come home, do my stuff, go dancing, whatever. And then I would have a night shift of 9 to 11 or 9 to 12 where I would create business and create systems. I mean, after having a child, I don't care how much drive I have. There is no way I'm working after 6 o'clock. And if I do, it's maybe one email. It's not like I used to send like maybe 40, 50 emails in one evening. So, and then, there's also mental health issues. The human body, human brain, human body is so complex. So it's just not, what was possible before is just not. So it's definitely a time for me to be like, okay, like with my situation, my story, what I've lived through, like where do I want to take this?
Interesting. I feel like this reminds me, and I feel like I need to balance about my father was going to listen to this eventually and hear what I mentioned earlier that it's been tough on me. It reminds me of stories of me as a kid, basically going to bed, and my parents would come back home, and my dad would come back home at say 8, 9 sometimes, and he would pull out the notebooks and say, "Hey, did you do your homework? Oh, okay, let's check quickly." And then check quickly turned into like we're opening, like we're on the desk and with the lamp and we're working until when you stare at something, you sort of everything gets like
Yes.
you have this visual effect that happens when you stare too much. And 3 hours in, I'm dead, and but my homeworks are done. And I do think that there's some good things in that, but that willpower depletes after a while, and you cannot like
Yes.
always push and always push. Um, but I guess where I'm going with this is that you're so much further from where you started. Also, like I mean, you described a staff of 12 people at some point, then now you have an agile team that that's more like compact, but with a great coordinator. So thank God you've built the level of skills and knowledge that you can drive other people to do some things where your time is leveraged, and you probably do more than you used to with less time. So
Yes.
that's a huge accomplishment in itself.
Thank you. And it's also realizing, I think me wanting to become a big firm was a lot linked with maybe I want to prove my dad wrong. Because as a child, it was always, you're not going to, he would literally say, you're not going to amount to anything. You will become nobody and you're an idiot. Always. So, extrapolate that. It's like I went to a very competitive high school. I didn't choose to go there. I went into law. I didn't choose to go into a very difficult career. I didn't want to do that, but I ended up loving it, and I plowed through because I had to achieve. I had to achieve. So I think a lot of it is linked to that and comparing to other people. But now it's kind of like, okay, but what do I want to do really? Like I was even telling a friend the other day, like if I didn't have the family situation, I think I would have gone into making films. That's I think making films or becoming a dancer. I don't know which one. Like who knows? Like I will never get that opportunity back to decide. So I think there's a lot of like proving to other people, especially when I left that mid-sized law firm, it was a lot of like, oh, it didn't work out. I will prove this person, I will prove that person. But the thing is now it's like I don't have to prove anything. Like I know who I am. I know what's important to me. Everything has changed, priorities have changed, and I can finally choose to do what I really want to do. It's not everything cannot always be about money. Money was also a big piece because growing up we had no money. Like it was very it's very my family comes from generations that went through the Armenian genocide. Immigrant families that came here and had nothing. And growing up, it was very poor, a lot of struggles. When my father left, I had to take student loans to help my mother with the mortgage payments. Money was, that's the other part of it. Like, money is always, I'm always thinking, am I going to have enough money? Am I going to have enough money? Like right now I have, I have a house, I have a family, I'm settled. Every day I can lose everything because I've lost everything. So it's just crazy how much everything I've lived as a child is directly impacts my everyday belief about so many important parts of my life.
I relate to that so much. I mean, we built a lot of our strength based on the pains we had. It seems there's this book called the Gift of Adversity, which is for like aiming at folks that have lived hardship so that they can rebuild themselves. And even if you don't wish to somebody that they'll encounter some of the hardships you had to go through or other had to go through, it definitely built some strength into you that I don't know if you could imagine living without today, like all this strength you've built. Um, and that's the paradox of it. Like they say that in every hardship, there's the seed of an equivalent positive thing or something like that. I think it's true, but it's such a paradox that we don't want to go through these things, but at the same time, like I know for myself that I wouldn't have, half of the strength I have and knowledge of myself today if I haven't gone through some humiliations at school, some hardship with being hit by adults, even if it was nothing close to what you described, or some peers at school, or psychological violence that I had to defend myself against in business. All this builds sort of your resilience. Sometimes, I don't know if you feel like this, but sometimes we have this strength or this capacity to defend ourselves, and it's almost like you've built this muscle so much that you want to unleash it and like get like fight, but sometimes it's like, hey, right now there's no fight. Or in your world there's always fight, but the point is not necessarily fighting. Like I feel like I'm well trained to metaphorically fight, but sometimes there's no need for a fight and I have to live with that.
Yes, that's so true. It's so true. Sometimes it's like sometimes because I, maybe like you, like I lived in this very up and down childhood where it was either calm or crazy, and the crazy was most of the time. It's almost like we need to create something in our everyday life to feel like we're fighting for something. Like the Rocky movies are my favorite movies of all time. Like anytime I feel down, like just like not long ago, I watched all the Rockies and all the Creeds. I love those movies, and I realize it's because it's constantly the story of someone being pushed down and then getting back up, being pushed down and getting back up, and and it also makes me realize that all these fights that I had to go through, it has allowed me. That's why when I meet people, I don't like to do small talk. Like I could do a little bit, like the weather. It's the weather. I have a big problem with people talking about the weather. But I always go to like, tell me what happened to you. Like everybody has a story. I think that's like my biggest strength is like people open up to me. And maybe that's something that I'm gonna do with future plans. Like I don't know. It'll be like sometimes I'm like maybe I should be a therapist. I have a lot of friends who are therapists. Like I could see myself being good at that. Like so. And I think that's a big quality is to be able to talk to people about what really matters. Like we all have problems. Every one of us is going through something. And if I can give a little bit of light in somebody's life, that's going to make me feel so much better.
It's inspiring, and it's also being strong by choice. The beauty is that uh, when you describe like how this is basically above all there's compassion as you have for your clients, or just love like we can have for people in general, for our family. And I don't know, it's like we can choose to use strength or not use it. That's a beautiful option. Knowing like you're in a situation, you've built the strength and you've built the compassion and you're aware and you choose which one you use, and like that's courage. I can be considerate but at the same time courageous. This is a great mix, and I think that you're one of the few people that know themselves enough that they can balance it. So
Yes. And I really realize that, and people tell me too, like, with my daughter, every minute I'm with her, the instinct inside of me is to get angry, unfortunately. it's to be angry, there's noise, there's chaos, right? But not once have I hit her, and not once will I hit her, and not once. I mean, yes, I maybe raise my voice a little bit here and there, but there's never been a crazy madness. Like, it's always like, okay, let's go talk. What you were doing was no. Like every minute, I have to work on myself to not be my father. Every single minute, and it took me a long time to realize that I was doing that. It took me a long time to realize that I'm not. I feel that way because she has needs, but it's because it's a reflection of how nobody met my needs. And so she really, just having a kid in general, like it really challenges you to break that pattern of trauma. Like I'm so grateful for that. It's very hard for me. Every single day is very hard, but I'm so glad that I'm pushing myself to not react on that. I don't want to say change because I was never a violent person, but inside of me there is that violence, right?
I mean, first of all, thank you for letting whoever is going to listen to this at this stage of this, venture podcast.
Yeah, because not a lot of people would say that. No, not a lot of people would say that's like, I want to hit my child,
Yeah,
but let's be honest, most of us are thinking that, like,
hunger definitely builds into a parent. Like your nervous system is just, especially if you live through some violence and you've I mean, personal experience says sometimes that's my number one thing that I have to fight against myself on is the topic of how I'm gonna get irritated by, as you said, noise. Nervous system is being challenged. It's really messy at the house.
Yes.
You're compressed, but you're trying not to explode. Sometimes I'm talking with my wife, we're having an argument. Of course, I would never, do anything crazy, but I sense this strong irritation that would be relieved by an expression of violence that I will never, like not on her, but or on my child, but so it's your will and who you are and your choice because the challenge is there. People are violent because a response to stress can be violence and it's a relief. But
And I remember one time, I don't know, my everything was very crazy. My daughter, she was crying. I was crying. I gave her a gift. She didn't like it. It was very emotional, and it got resolved. She went to bed. And my husband said, sometimes I really wish, like, it's like being in a jungle, being like a gorilla that the babies are, everybody's screaming and the gorilla just screams so just the babies can call. She's like, sometimes I really want to do that.
Agreed.
So
I do too. And then I picture that as well. I'm really like, if I would, things would calm down. But then we would relive through the pattern, and by choice, it's like, basically that's courage, and like we're fighting ourselves and going against that adversity. Interesting. I'd say thank you because you sharing this helps us realize that we're not alone. Like everybody's going through its stuff. Like everybody's going through hard things. There's no life that's easy. Nobody goes through life, I think, and never gets like damaged at least a little. So
that's right.
So I think the sooner we realize that we're all struggling, that others are struggling, we can like understand ourselves and our struggle. Money and status and having to do certain things to get validation is a huge part of the sort of maybe of the trap of the way we try to answer those traumas often. But and sometimes it only takes a few phone calls to get out of a trap, like if pressure at work or a pressure with situation, like one of your clients, like somebody is going through a difficult situation at home. Sometimes just like a conscious choice can remove you from the pressure fast if you're there.
That's right.
So thank you so much for having being here, having this talk, and
My pleasure.
definitely was not expecting all that we discussed. At the same time, it felt like you'd be the type of person with whom to have an unusual conversation.
Very open.
In a good way.
Always say I'm an open book. Yes.
Well, that's awesome. So thank you so much, and hoping to have other conversations like this.
For sure. Thank you so much. This was great. Thank you.